Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Today's conversation is with Dr. Don Welch, a physician and also a Christian believer who has written a book to help couples work together in their marriage.
This is Dr. Don Welch, licensed marriage and family therapist, representing a new book, The Responsive Marriage, Finding the Path Out of Reactivity. I have a website at WelchTherapyInstitute.com, WelchTherapyInstitute.com in San Diego. My name is spelled with a C. Welch is like Welch's grape juice, and that's who I am. Thank you.
How long have you been working on that book then, sir?
Well, I've been working on the book, Paul, for probably 8 years, plus an entire group of materials for the local church for marriages. And I have an assessment tool that measures involuntary reactions in couples. That seems to be the number one issue for most couples, and it measures that. We provide a 150-page handbook plus 50 pages of analyses, and also this book that is about 350 pages that really goes into details on how to have a responsive marriage rather than a reactive marriage. So it's been quite some time we've worked on this.
Okay. Who would you anticipate would be using that? Would that be practitioners or would it be the general public?
Paul, that's a good question. It's actually created for people who are dating or that they are engaged or planning for marriage, and those who have been married 1 year or 1 week, all up to 50 years. It's meant for marriages. Clinicians would probably find it helpful because it has a lot of science in it that we try to make very understandable, and how our bodies work and how we have reflexes and reactivity without knowing. It's sometimes out of sight, out of mind. We don't realize that we're reacting.
Is this something that could be helpful to any number of couples, regardless of how long they've been together or whatever their lifestyle or decisions up till this point may have been?
It's filled with biblical and scientifically verified materials. So it does have the Bible included in showing how to have a godly relationship. I don't think I've ever lost my voice like this when I'm speaking, but I am right now. But it's coming back to me, Paul, so thank you.
Could you explain to me why people tend to dismiss the Bible unless they are hardcore Christian believers as far as the direction that it provides for marriage?
You know, I don't understand that. I am a Christian, of course. I don't understand why people actually decide not to actually read it. Because even the 10 Commandments that talk about basic honesty, basic respect, love your neighbor as you love yourself, honor your father and mother, that's the 5th principle that says, and you'll have long life. There's scientific, non-Christian scientific research that clearly suggests when there's a good relationship between someone and their parent, and that's not always possible, that what can happen is that they can have long life, and that's in the Bible. So I don't quite understand that, why people are not open to the Bible, because science, and this book is fraught with Bible and science. Science oftentimes declares what the Bible already declares. So, for example, in Philippians 4 that says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. We may know that verse, and then it says, and he will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. And it's interesting how God put heart first, because we feel things oftentimes before we think them, and science is clear on this. I've been teaching it for decades, and science will tell you that we oftentimes feel something before we think it, and that's true science. An example of that is if one of us were to touch, not planning to, but touch a hot stove, our hand would reflex immediately before our brain knows it's hot. Now, most people would say, no, I know it's hot immediately, but there is a split second where your hand reflexes before you know that it's hot. And that's the same way with reactivity in a relationship. Oftentimes we'll say something and go, oh my, why did I say that? Or we'll behave in a certain way, react in a certain way before. And that's what the Bible was saying. St. Paul, while he was in prison and writing to the church at Philippi, he said, be anxious for nothing in Philippians 4. And then it says, he will guard your heart, Jesus, God, will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. God could have inverted those. He could have said mind first. But science clearly says this is true. It is true that we feel something oftentimes before we think it. That's not always the case, but science is very supportive of the Bible.
The way you've described it, it seems very self-evident to me personally, because I can't remember the number of times over the years that I have said something to my spouse, and then
Yes.
and then after we've separated to give each other a moment to cool down, I say practically out loud, "Now, where did that come from?
Yes.
How did
Yes,
how did I get there?"
I've had couples, Paul, I've asked them at conferences or seminars, I'll say, how many of you were, just like you just described in a way with you and your wife, how many of you had this misunderstanding with your spouse and you're fighting, you're talking about it, you're really upset, and then you stop and go, what are we fighting about? Where did we even start this? Because oftentimes in trauma, I'm a trauma specialist, so I work with lots of trauma patients. And what happens is that even early in our life, when we have a traumatic experience, even say it's on the playground and your friends, you walk up to your friends and they turn and walk away. That would be traumatic for a young child. What's wrong with me? Why is this happening? So that follows us in our somatic, that's in the Greek, the body. It follows us through life. So sometimes we'll be in a misunderstanding, like you were suggesting, you and your wife, or my wife, Robin, and myself, where she might say something, I might say something, and then what happens is we react before we're aware of it. And that's what Paul was saying in the New Testament. And science declares that. In fact, one of the pioneers of the scientific revolution really was a person who actually said that we feel sorry because we cry, angry because we strike, afraid because we tremble. That was 1890 by William James. And that's one of the main theories in science today. There are other theories, but that one still holds true because of the biology. So here we have science really declaring the Bible as speaking truth.
Would you say that as a couple reads this, that they will shake their head from time to time and say, "Yeah, boy, that really feels familiar"?
Well, I hope so. I try to define that because if I can say it this way, Paul, that I define reactivity as involuntary, uncontrolled, relationship impeding behaviors that originate from the feeling part of our brain known as the limbic system. And because they originate from the feeling part of the brain rather than the thinking part, they are largely outside of our conscious awareness. So when people are reading the book, Paul, what I'm hoping they will do is look at reactivity because it can be so insidious. We often are not even aware we are, say, rolling our eyes, sighing in exasperation, turning away from our spouse, or acting in other ways that tend to create distance. So we try to work on ways where a couple can manage this in a better way and maybe even get some help related to how to be more responsive than reactive.
I think I alluded a moment ago to the concept that couples would be working with this. Is that something then, your book, that couples could read together, or each one could read in turn, or each with their own copy, so that they can be tracking together and working together on some of the issues they may have?
Absolutely. What I've done is after each chapter, there's 10 chapters, and after each chapter, there are questions that the couple can answer. And then throughout the book, there are questions, little charts that they can measure how much they understand each other. And so they can do it as a couple, or they can read the book individually. And then the book itself ties to the assessment tool that we have in the very back of the book.
Thank you very much for your expertise and for your willingness to meet with me over the phone at this hour of the day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Have a great day. Thank you.
My thanks to Dr. Don Welch in California for speaking with us today for the WIHS Journal. For further information, call us at 860-346-1049, 860-346-1049. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of the station. I'm Paul Kretschmer for the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.